Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Elder Care meeting of June 3rd to order. I'd like to ask for a roll call, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Ricard? Mr. Ricard?
You're on mute.
Yeah, I had to unmute myself. Yep, I'm here.
Mr. Ricard, Mr. Beston,
Here, here.
Miss Chapman,
Here.
Oh,
Mr. Camiso,
here.
Miss Cunningham,
Here.
Mr. Demolowitz, Gary, Mr. Purley,
Here.
Miss Whalen,
Yes, I'm here.
Everybody get their own bowl.
Miss McLaughlin.
Yes, I'm here.
So, Madam Chair, you have 8 of 9 committee members present and a quorum. I'll also point out, as far as non-members, you have Minority Leader Moriello, Ms. Lakakis, Mr. Bergdorf, Mr. Tunney, Ms. Lockhart, Mr. Langdon, and Mr. Miller. I think I got everyone in terms of legislators, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for being here and our fellow colleagues who joined the committee tonight. Thank you for being here. I know that the Elder Care Committee is a source of a lot of information, a lot of concern that people might have regarding COVID-19. And so I'm glad to have you here to be a part of this conversation. Also, I want to remind everyone that as we have been going forward and listening to the county executive every day and listening to the governor every day, I do recognize that there's been a lot of conversation about nursing homes and services provided to seniors. So I've been trying to keep myself up to date on what they have been saying and maintaining some knowledge there. Also want to acknowledge that we do have the Commissioner Deborah Tano on the line with us today. But as we're going to go forward and deal with the agenda item that we have, I want you to, those who are not on Social Services Committee, I just want to inform you that this item was also carried in the Social Services Committee last week. I'm also on that committee and I sat in on that meeting, but I felt that it was important that it also be included in the Elder Care Committee, which is where it should have been in the first place from my perspective. But often I've learned that legislation is often carried by 2 committees. So, but I believe that this one should have been properly placed here. So that's why we're meeting here with that particular piece of legislation now having been put on our agenda. So before we get into any other conversation, I do want to move on this piece of legislation that has been presented to our agenda. And since I can't see it, I'm going to ask one of our supporters here to Majority Counsel or the Counsel to the Chair to please read this to us.
Yes, Madam Chair. Item number 1, authorizing an agreement with the New York State Office for the Aging regarding coronavirus aid, relief, and Economic Security Act funding.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I guess since I kind of started the presentation with the Social Services Committee, I'll make a few comments and then turn it over to the Commissioner. So this is our first allotment of COVID-related funding from the state. It comes from NYSOFA. They have been, to kind of echo my comments at the other committee, they have been kind enough to suspend the rules for the 3 programs that are listed in the backup materials to allow this funding to be used for other purposes. So even though it says things like supportive services and the nutrition services and caregiver support, it's likely, well, the Commissioner can speak to this a little better than I, but it will be used for to backfill for what was spent related to the increase in meal need, especially during the initial outbreak, which is fortunately beginning to taper off. So Commissioner, if you're still there, I know you had kind of looked up some other information you thought the committee might be interested in.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, Deb, go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, okay. Okay. So when COVID hit, all of our numbers in the nutrition area rose dramatically, not just in our county, but in the counties across the state. So everybody has gone up between 20 and 50, maybe even 60%, as we've looked at the meals that have been recorded. What happened was NYSOFA relaxed all the rules and regulations. So if you were in a congregate meal, because you have to remember back then, the congregate meals stopped immediately.
Mm-hmm.
The social adult daycare stopped immediately because nobody is allowed to get together, and the seniors have really been sequestered, So we gave them the choice to go to a grab and go kind of meal, depending upon where they were, or a home delivered meal. And that was how NYSOFA then arranged to be able to cover the cost. We then were able to get funding, stimulus funding. And it was coming in stimulus 1 package and the stimulus 3. And that money is used to cover all the meals. I can tell you that, we've been to the South End, we've been to Arbor Hill, we do the whole city. It has been staggering, the numbers that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I think that some people probably freaked out and thought they wouldn't get food, and then people were trying to get on. What NYSOFA was saying was, we're relaxing all the rules. We want people fed. Take everyone, and that's what we've done.
And if I could add, Madam Chair, so, this was part of, and I think I mentioned this at previous committee meetings, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but this was like part and parcel to a much larger food distribution network, right? So, we had to utilize this resource, the home delivered meal resource, for quarantine, right? So if you were an older individual and you were in quarantine and you needed meals and you were over 60, then it was utilized for that purpose. And of course, that was all coordinated with food pantries. And of course, it was a streamlined system for individuals that weren't necessarily home delivered meal qualified, that they would be actually taken care of through another system. And then there was also a bunch of considerations that had to go along with, DSS eligible individuals. If they were over 60, maybe they got quarantined in a hotel without preparation abilities. So they needed home delivered meals of the either shelf stable or of the prepared kind. They couldn't even have frozen meals because Commissioner Rattano did a great job with providers of actually ramping up frozen meal production for individuals, as she said, that were trapped, couldn't get out, elderly people couldn't go to the store, so they could have both shelf stable as well as frozen meals in their freezer in case there was something that happened and people couldn't get to their food. So this was part of a much larger network of providers to kind of get us through the really tough parts when we were having much larger numbers.
So this money that's coming in is to cover those extra expenses that came with adding those extra meals. Because I know I got called from several people, seniors, that needed help and wanted to have meals delivered on a regular basis. Because initially, no one was going out. They weren't allowing anybody in.
That's right.
And daily, I was having to call the Department of Aging to add people's name to the list. I'm sure some of you others had the same experience.
Yeah.
So I know that I lived this, so I want to know, were others having that same experience in your particular area? Because I know that I did down here in the South End of Albany, but I also had it in terms of people that were in other parts. I even had a gentleman that I had to add to the list that lived in Latham, was not normally on the list. And another woman on Upper Washington Ave, her children didn't know, how she was going to be fed. And she would not go out. She wouldn't let anybody in the house. So did any of you, others of you, have that same kind of experience with requests being made to you?
Madam Chairman, may I say something?
Yes.
Thank you. This question is actually for Commissioner Rotano. I just want a point of clarification. I know you and I have discussed this in the past about a life path here in the city of Cohoes Senior Center. Just as a point of clarification, though, who is covered by that? Does this grant everybody, income-based, age? What is the situation?
You know, I only got I only got part of your question because you weren't coming through. Are you asking me? What were you asking me? Who got covered?
I heard the question. So this funding covers individuals who are home delivered meal eligible, which, if my memory serves me correctly, Commissioner, tell me if I'm wrong, is individuals who are over 60.
People, right? People who were over 60. During the time of COVID, now we did not have to go through the normal procedure, which would have been the Compass. Unless, you know, if it was something that came to us in a different avenue, but when it came to us through COVID, then it went. We immediately got them on. They got their meals instantly. Actually, the next day they were done, and we kept track of that. Now, as it starts to go down, you know, we were happy to be able to assist everybody during that time. But now as markets begin to open and people are able to get out and people will go out, then, you know, we'll begin to see a decline, I hope. But yes, it was the whole county. So everybody was, you know, everybody was included. Cohoes, Waterville, the city, South End, Arbor Hill, you know, the hill towns. We've gone everywhere with the providers that we have.
A lot of our referrals.
Just a point of clarification, though, is that income-based or just age-based?
Well, a couple of things. No, it wasn't just income-based. It wasn't income-based. No, it wasn't income-based. It was.
Okay.
It was because it was a disaster declaration. So because it was an
Okay.
emergency declaration, we got to take. You know, we took everybody. On a normal day,
Okay.
you know, it would. You know, if it was somebody who was homebound, there would be. You know, there would be other things that would get people a home delivered meal. In this case, because it was a disaster declaration, people just needed to call, and we were able to help them.
A large
Thank you.
number of these referrals came from Department of Health. So the minute you had somebody that tested positive and was in the age group, it would go to Department of Health. And of course, they have trackers. So they begin tracking who that individual had contact with. So let's say an individual is 60, suddenly is quarantined. They may be of means, but they have no ability to actually get food because they have to be quarantined. And so this was the only way for the system to work. Otherwise, people would have had to have broken quarantine.
And this number, the contact number was flashed across the screen, your television screen, every day when the county executive was giving his daily report and when the governor was giving his daily report. If anyone needed food or needed assistance, dial this number, 518-447, whatever the other 4 digits were. And
717.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
I have a question too.
so I'm just saying, I point that out to just lend to the fact that people were dialing that number. They were not dialing it thinking, well, I gotta be 60, I gotta make $25,000 or less or whatever. Food, and this is the number. And that's what they called. I think that Ms. Cunningham had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is, and I appreciate the flexibility that was given by the feds when they passed the CARES Act for purposes like this. But my question is, my understanding of these dollars, this question is for the commissioner, that it was not just COVID positive individuals that could receive these services. It was anybody who was at risk being positive could seek and receive these meals. That's question one. And the second one is in the documentation, it talks about other services, other supportive services. So in addition to the meals, do these grant dollars provide any support for additional supportive services for this population?
That's for you.
I already forgot your first question, but I think the answer to it was yes. You had to be 60 and over, in order to get the meal. That's that's it. These people were people who went to a congregate meal. There are no questions asked. That
Right.
they're 60, that's it, and they're entitled to it.
Great.
You're entitled to a home delivered meal as well. As far as supportive services go, the New York director, NYSOFA director, has arranged so that we had total flexibility to move money where it needed to be. When you talk about supportive services, for instance, social adult daycare, okay, that got closed down right away. That has its own line. That money didn't come in for that. The problem that the counties are having, at least the counties for aging are having, was being able to meet the need to feed all of the people that needed nutrition.
Okay. Mr. Bergdorf, you had your hand up for a question?
Yes, Commissioner,
Yeah,
the $789,000 that we're getting, is that like a lump sum block grant, or is it keyed into the number of extra meals that we provided over a particular point in time?
that sum comes from the Office for Aging was given, not us, not my office, but the New York State Office for Aging was given $73 million in that kind of funding. From there, every county has a certain weight. And so you received, according to whatever you were weighted, that was the portion of the money that you got. So that was where the 700,000 came from.
My follow-up question is the $789,000
It's
adequate?
stimulus 3.
Is it adequate for your increased costs for the meals programs?
I'm scared to death that it isn't. I hope that it will be able to cover everything. We have been very fortunate with our vendors, and as all of you as legislators come across our vendors, you ought to really thank them, because they have been standing on their heads to help us out. We've been particularly blessed with Colony, with Beltron. They've answered the call on the weekend at night, no matter when I called there, to be able to help a senior. I'm hoping that this money will be able to cover these emergency meals. I can't tell you 100% that that's going to be the case, but I'm praying that it's going to be the case. So the other supportive services, because they're not doing any face-to-face, so like community caregivers or any of that kind of, nobody's doing any face-to-face work yet.
Keep in
So
mind,
everything's being done over the phone.
Legislator Bergdorf also, that this is still actually going on. So we don't have a full idea of what the final bill will be.
And we can only hope, I think, that the Senate will take some action. I mean, that talking about praying, we can only pray that the Senate will take some action and move on the second stimulus plan, where I believe other money would shake loose for similar programs such as this. But we don't know.
Deb, I had a question.
I have a question too.
Is
Hello,
that-
Madam Chairwoman.
Is that
Jennifer.
Lynn?
It is
And
me.
Jennifer too.
Okay. Jennifer, as a committee member,
Yes.
would you go
Yes,
ahead?
I have a question. Hi, Commissioner, this is Jennifer Whalen, and I have a question that's related but unrelated to nutritional support. And I represent a district in Colony, and recently we had an emergency curfew, and it was very difficult for many of my constituents to even realize that there was a curfew in effect. And now with the town of Colony, I've been in touch with the technology offices, and they're going to have better posts on their website. and on the Colony Police Department Facebook page. But a lot of members of the elderly community here in Colony don't necessarily have access to computers. And so I was very concerned for a lot of my older constituents who, the curfew was in effect after the press conferences by the governor and County Executive McCoy. And I was fearful for them being out on the streets after 9 o'clock and not realizing that there was a curfew in effect. And one of the components of having an age-friendly county is to be able to alert, the elderly, communicate with them and provide them with information. So I pursued it with the town and said, the website and Facebook pages are great, but a lot of our elderly that live at home, may not have access to this information. Why isn't there any kind of alert system? And they told me that this Nexile, alert system,
Nixle.
yeah, or
Nixle.
something like that has
Can
been
I interrupt for 1 second?
been
Can we
rendered
just-
obsolete.
Can we finish Jennifer, I want her to answer your question, but
Okay.
can we complete the agenda item? Any further discussion on the agenda item, so we can go ahead and vote on that and then get back to.
Motion to move it.
Can,
Second it, Bob Beston.
those-
Gary Demolowitz.
all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. So,
So, Madam
Go ahead.
Chairwoman, so I guess my question to the commissioner is how that Nexel system has gone obsolete. So how is it that we can improve our communications with the elderly that don't have computers, and many of them don't? I'm wondering, like, what happened to, what your thoughts are on that and how we can improve it, if at all?
Well, let me just ask you this. Who said Nixle was obsolete? I live by it.
Well, I was asking the folks in Colony, the IT, I'm not sure of her exact title, but I asked her, why we couldn't do one of those beeps or like a robocall to people on their landlines, and she said that system that begins with an N, they discontinued it.
Yeah,
she told
Nixle.
me. Yeah.
No, I get Nixle every day, and it gives me an update. In my community, I live in Guilderland.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Gary Demolowitz. Colony does have the access to do a notification townwide with the reverse 911. So I would look into that the next time the town does a curfew.
So have we been using that countywide then? Like, for instance, if whoever lives in Guilderland, have they been alerting our seniors by that system?
Yes, the sheriff has used it from time to time during emergencies, and that's something that we did probably 15 years ago.
So has the sheriff been using it on this particular occasion?
Yeah,
or this week where all these
that I don't
curfews-
know. That I don't know. You could check with the sheriff, and he'll let you know all about reverse 911.
but
Okay.
this is Carolyn, I'm in Albany, and I've gotten things from Nexel in the last week or two.
I do too, Carolyn. I still get Nexo.
It's working
Yeah, I
somewhere.
did too.
And why it's not working in Colony, we'll have to look into that, but I don't
know, but I like the robocall thing.
Or a robot, yeah. Sometimes you get.
The
I
reverse-
don't know where that, I know Lynn, I know you're in the queue there for a question. I don't know where that falls. If we're talking about that just as relationship to seniors, we will certainly take this up and try to get an answer and make sure if it's not working in Colony, get it working. Or whatever other options we might have there, because it is working in other parts of the county.
Thank you,
and-
Madam
and- Thank you so much for the question. Len?
My question was mostly about volunteers. I know that a lot of those meal delivery things are volunteer driven, and I was wondering, Deb, if you had an idea of what's the volunteer level like around the county. I know that I've been volunteering because a lot of the 70-year-old volunteers couldn't come and deliver meals. So I'm just wondering if that's happening all over the county, and is any of that money helping out with staffing, or is that strictly for the food and the service?
The money is strictly for the food, because I've got to be able to to get by that. Your question on volunteers, we were doing a survey every other week, trying to see if the vendors were at capacity, if they could do much more, because nobody knew what was coming, you know?
Right.
And one of the, I usually have a daily call with all the vendors. And, you know, and we kept track of the levels of volunteers. And I have to tell you, we did up till now, we've done very well. I think we lost maybe 2 volunteers in one place and 1 volunteer in another. But people have stayed well, I will say, with our volunteers. No, we were worried about people becoming ill. We didn't have 1 volunteer come down with the virus.
Good.
So at least not anything that was reported. So we were we were really very lucky with that. So we didn't see a decline volunteer wise, but regarding the funds will go to pay for the food. And as I said, I'm praying that it will cover, that it will be able to cover everything.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? If not,
Motion
Can
to
I-
adjourn.
can I get a motion
I'll
to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Bye.
We'll see
Thank you.
Monday.
Thank you.
Is it next Monday?
Monday.